I'm going to start by introducing myself. My name is Joanne Jorgensen, and I have been in both fashion and footwear for nearly 26 years now. My last in-house tenure was 10 years with Nike, running their footwear innovation lab here in London. And I now have my own venture called TEAMGLUE. What that is really looking at the challenges we face as designers, makers, developers, and teams to create product more sustainably for our whole ecosystem. And I work as a coach, a facilitator, and a workshop director to help teams come together and make better product, both for our own lives, but also for our ecosystem. I'm just going to go along to each of you, and you can introduce yourselves. So I'll start with you,
Sure,
Nicole.
Then I go ahead and start. So my name is Nicole. I'm representing LENZING Group today. So for those of you who don't know LENZING, so LENZING is a company who produces wood-based fibers, which are traceable, which are also circular. So we are producing tensile lyocell fibers, tensile modal fibers, and eco-vero, which can be used along the supply chain, as well as like in different applications, ranging from home textile to fashion to footwear. So my position at LENZING is to be the head of technology and developments. So we are doing basically what material collaborations as well as application development. So we are following along the supply chain and doing a lot of creative stuff. Also focusing on footwear, so I'm happy to be here and have the discussion with you today, and also be featured by so many great partners when it comes also to all these shoes. So all of them having also tensile lyocell fibers in their shoes. So I'm happy to talk about this today with you. Yeah, handing over to David.
Okay, my name's David. We have just launched a 100% bio-circular footwear product, a sneaker brand. We're focusing primarily on beautiful products that has an end of life that is ultimately harmless. We've been in the shoe industry a very long time. This is actually my 40th year this year in the shoe industry. I started when I was 17. My father had a shoe factory. And I've spent the last 30 years in Asia making shoes for big brands, small brands. And we now are launching our own brand for the first time.
Hi, I'm Solene Roure. I am the creative director and co-founder of Circle Sportswear. We're a Paris and London-based running company, and we make running clothes and shoes in circular economy. That means we try to use biomaterials as much as possible, recycled materials. We make everything in Europe, and we make with end in life in mind. And our shoe, which you can see also at the Footwear Innovation Forum, is that what it's called? Is the first running shoe in the world made of 75% natural materials, such as wool, wood, and other plants. It's made in Europe entirely for social, values, and it's designed with end of life in mind. But I will tell you more about it later, and I will.
Great, and hello everyone. I'm Sarah Westyoung. I'm the head of growth at Modern Synthesis, and we are a London-based innovation company that's bringing life to new materials. And the way that we do that is by bringing new materials to life. So we work with a compound called bacterial nanocellulose, which is a mouthful, but essentially it's a natural byproduct of fermentation. So it's naturally derived. And then we are able to use material science to effectively convert that into a range of non-woven textiles, which can replace and supplement anything from an animal leather to a vegan leather, all the way through to like a PU-coated warp knit. So we're working with fashion partners to help them make better decisions on their material sourcing, and very interested in footwear at this time.
Amazing. I'm going to start off around material innovation and sourcing because our panel is material flows and fashioning the future of footwear. And as we all know, footwear is complex, very complex compared to apparel. I'm going to start with you, Sarah, because you've had a really exciting reveal today, and actually you're holding it in your hand. Can you share a bit more about this project and how it aims to provoke the sportswear industry into rethinking, I guess, shoe design as a whole and making better product?
Yes, absolutely. So this is actually the first time in the world that we're revealing, alongside a few partners that I'll talk about in just a moment, the Corva shoe. So this is a shoe that we've been working on for the last 2 years in partnership with Ecovative, as well as OroBio. And the brief that we kind of set ourselves was, how would we design a running shoe the way that nature would? Because currently in use, sportswear shoes can use up to 35 different component parts, and most of those are sourced from petrochemical inputs, and they're also kind of adhered in toxic ways. So we wanted to kind of go back to the starting board, if you will, and just question the way that footwear is manufactured today and understand if we can minimize those component parts by actually leveraging a more natural material basket. So we've also heard a lot in our respective lines of work, like, why don't you just work with fill in the blank innovator? And we thought it was high time that we actually did that and that we saw how our different technologies can kind of work together in concert. So essentially, the upper of this shoe, this bit, was produced by us by Modern Synthesis. And again, that's produced through bacterial nanocellulose, which has a lot of ecological benefits. And then there's a 3D printed scaffold, which was made out of PHA by Roure Bio. And that was actually myceliated through. So mushroom roots were grown through the scaffold to essentially create the composite material, which was then reinforced by LENZING's tensile non-woven materials. So ultimately, you have 5 component parts in a shoe that normally has upwards of 35. And while this is just a prototype for us to really stretch the boundaries of what's possible, we'd also like it to be a bit of a clarion call to the industry, asking, can we radically reduce and also produce new arresting looks, feels, and functions?
And I'd love to hear, because being that radical, challenges show up. Was there anything particular in that process that showed up for you in the Modern Synthesis team?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like, again, going back to the natural, how would nature do it? What came out for us was that nature doesn't work in silos, it works in systems, and that actually we can like leverage some of the synergies between our technologies, again, to just reduce the number of things that need to happen. So do you need to have all of those parts? Do they need to be flown around the world? Do they need to be toxic in nature? And in the future, I think the question will turn to, how can this be better, indeed, than the performance that incumbent materials are delivering?
Incredible. And I'm going to move to you, Solene, because Circle Sportswear have created this incredible 75% bio-based material shoe. I'd love to also hear your journey in breaking down this barrier and creating a performance running shoe.
Where do I start? This shoe has been 3 to 4 years in the making, and in order to make it happen, unlike David, I didn't have a factory, so we had to create a whole production line, a whole supply chain out of scratch to challenge everyone we worked with. Basically, we asked all the suppliers, and a few of you are in the crowd, including LENZING, we asked them to work extra hard on a project because, as you know, if you do a sustainable project, it's not going to be as easy as another project. And the way we convinced them to work with us is by telling them that we were going to be fully transparent about every bit of the shoe. And even though we are a small brand, because Circle is a tiny little running brand, we would make a design that stands out. And that is something that is very important to us. I'm a designer. I have 20 years of experience in the industry. I worked for some of the biggest brands out there. And I wanted to show that sustainability can be more exciting than it is. And I wanted to bring joy back into sustainability. The project had lots and lots of challenge, and we're still learning, and we're working on future versions already. But what the human factor of bringing everyone together on telling them plastics are bad, people make running shoes out of petrol that they use for 4 months to up to 2 years, and then they buy another pair and they buy another pair because a lot of your runners, I'm sure, in here, and you know how important it is to have the right shoe to not hurt yourself. And the turnaround is insane. And what happens to that shoe you throw away? There's no second-hand market, really, for running shoes. So it just goes to landfill somewhere far away from London, and it turns into microplastics. And that's why it's dangerous, the harmful microplastics. And I'm pretty sure that's why everybody is here today. But can talk about that after.
And that leads so amazingly on to end of life and circularity. I mean, David, you mentioned when we spoke a few weeks ago about the need to address end of life more seriously, and suggesting around what major brands, should agree to, particularly around polyester recycling. Can you share a bit about that?
Sure. I mean, let me talk about my shoe
Yeah,
first. As
absolutely.
we're running down the corner.
And I would say like these shoes are all out in the second room out there, so everyone can actually
Exactly.
look. Some of them are broken down with parts as well.
We, like Solene, I think we're comrades here, actually. We tried to make a 100% biocircular shoe. It took us, we planned for 2 years. It took us 6. It was a very long and challenging journey, and I'm a shoe technician, so I thought I would be able to achieve that a little bit faster. But our mission was very clear from the beginning. Our mission was, number one, beautiful, desirable product, because people want beautiful, desirable products. And if they want it, they buy it. And if they buy it, they can make change. And after that, it should also be ultimately harmless. The also ultimately harmless was the super hard part. The beautiful product was the fairly easy part, to be perfectly honest. So our journey was all about biocircularity, and therefore the end of life had to be taken care of by ourselves. In the end, our journey was much more complex in the fact that we decided that the challenges were so great that we ended up partnering predominantly with European material vendors, even though we're based in Vietnam, actually. Our main business is based in Vietnam. We initially intended to use some of our manufacturing base, but we've decided to build our own shoe factory in the end to make sure that we can control everything. And we've even built our own composting facility in Europe, in Germany, so we can cover the whole life. And I think for us, end of life was the key. I think we all need to have an end of life for our product. And we're all pounding out tens of millions of pieces of product as well, and we're struggling with that. To your point about polyester, I was recently at the Global Fashion Summit, and I was talking on a panel there, and there was a discussion about what should we talk about this year. And I got a little bit frustrated because there were some very big brands there, and there was a lot of discussion about, oh, it's legislation's fault. There is no legislation. And I got frustrated with that and said, but the legislation will always be behind the biggest brands. And brands like Nike and Puma and Adidas and Lululemon and so on and so forth that are using enormous amounts of polyester. It can't be that you blame the recycling companies because of their challenges. My suggestion was that instead they skip over down to the tier 4 vendors instead, go to the 3 or 4 largest tier 4 vendors that create the polyester pellets and say we need standardization on 3 or 4 grades of polyester. This grade would allow you, all the brands, to actually put a standard pictogram on the product, which would make recycling extraordinarily easy. This was the idea behind it.
Yeah, so this would facilitate basically easier recycling and sorting
exactly
of end of
which
life
would get the
footwear
feedstock
product
in much faster, and the
Great.
recycling could grow much faster.
Yep. So Solene, I'm going to go back to you a second. So the Supernatural Runner, that was designed with disassembly in mind. What happens to this shoe at end of life?
So the disassembly part is kind of a concept at this point. Of course, when people buy a shoe with us, they send it back after use. But the idea is to check if our idea for dismantleable shoe at the end of life works. You see there is what we call a foxing, this white line around the shoe. It was designed that way to ease the disassembly at the end of life, meaning that I would say 98% of the upper is natural material, so it doesn't shed microplastics. So we are currently testing it for biodegradability, but at least we know that it's not going to release microplastics. The midsole is P-backs are new, which is the best foam you can use for a running shoe. The goal for a running shoe, for people who don't know, is that it keeps you from being hurt, so that it protects your joints and things like that. So for the first time, we used a 45% castor bean-based midsole, and for the first time, it was made in Europe, because until maybe a year ago, the machines to make these types of midsoles, the process, by the way, is called supercritical foaming, they didn't exist in Europe. So we've helped European manufacturing take more and more room in Europe. And then the outsole is a bio-based polymer that doesn't shed microplastics. So the idea is that at the end of life, we want this shoe to be separated in 3 parts. So right now, this is a concept that we're testing with a few partners, and we're going to see where it goes. But I'm being transparent, we haven't closed the loop. As a tiny brand, we will not figure out on our own how to recycle shoes. However, we can suggest new systems and new ways for when the systems are ready to recycle shoes, at least our shoe won't be the most difficult to take apart.
Absolutely. Incredible work, though. So I'm actually going to, well, it's not up yet, actually. So there should be a QR code that will show up. I saw it a moment ago and it's disappeared again. And you can send us any questions because I'll hold some time at the end for the panelists to answer your questions. So I'm going to move on to a bit of a material deep dive.
Yeah, sure.
And I'm looking at you, Nicole,
Yeah.
because the LENZING group produces both tensile fibers and filaments.
Definitely, yeah.
And I'd love you to elaborate on specific performance characteristics that each bring particularly to footwear applications.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to tensile fibers and filaments in the footwear industry, both are really matchable because they have so many benefits on it, like thermoregulation, moisture management. Also, when it comes to sustainability aspects, when you think about biodegradability, traceability, so both are really matching in the footwear industry. And you would also not think like how versatile the material is. So you can use it for all components in the shoe. So you can really start from the upper to the lining, even as a non-women's form, like for the insole, as well as for reinforcement materials, also in a powderish form, like for the outsole. And today we have the best examples here, as I said before, like having Sarah also using it for the reinforcements, also Solene also featuring it like in the upper part, as well as David. He has like on the laces and also in the inner lining. So there are so many great examples already in the market. On top, we have also like great collaborations with other next-gen materials, focusing on leather substitution. So we have collaboration ongoing with Myrom. So they're used as a backing material. Also, I think I saw Olivier also today, like from Recycled Leather. So we are also featured in the Gunny boot, where they're also using tencel as a backing material. On top, we were also featured, I mean, I can talk about so many innovations here, yeah. So we were also featured in the Calvin Klein shoe together with Ananas Anam, so also in the upper part. So there's so many great innovations in the market where you also use tensile lyocell fibers and filament. And also to point out a little bit what Solene was also mentioning, like for the circle, for the supernatural runner. So this was actually used because it's something also new in the market, in particular the filament. So it was the first one ever using the tensile lyocell filament due to so many aspects, also thinking about lightweight, also thinking about circularity, also to think about traceability in the market. So there are so many things and also attributes that you could cover featuring tensile fibers, featuring the tensile lyocell filament for these kind of applications. And also spinning this along, like how would you decide for like a circular approach? There is always the circular design approach in the market. So you really start as a designer, like thinking about the material concept. Then you have to decide also continuously about the yarn, about the material, about the fabric, and then end of life considerations. And we already covered it here before. So this is like these 4 pillars which make then the material sustainable in the end.
And it'd be interesting to hear because it is,
Yeah.
each of you have used a LENZING fabric.
Yeah.
When you were making your material choices, does anyone have reasons that they can share for why they lean more towards some of the innovations that Nicole has just shared? Was there a particular reason that came to the top?
Is this for me? Sorry, I can't
Oh,
hear
no worry.
very well
I can speak
what
up
you
a
guys
wee
are
bit. No, don't worry. It's like the noise and then shouting over.
Yeah.
So I was just saying, each of you have chosen a LENZING material. Can any of you like talk to why that was a premium material choice as you were creating your innovative products?
Please.
Do you want? Okay, well, this shoe is not just me. Obviously, there's a lot of people involved, and I work with an incredible engineer called Miles, and he's the one who sourced materials and would teach me about it. Because I'm a
Amazing.
designer, I also have limited attention. Like I needed someone to explain it in a way that I could understand it, and so. He taught me about the properties of Tencel Lux, which is the one we're using, and it just made a lot of sense for us. What I think was really interesting is I had no idea it was made from wood. We talk so much about lyocell and tencel in the industry, but most people don't know that it's made from wood. And then when I found out that it was from Austrian forest, that is actually a byproduct of the furniture industry, and how there are more forests in Europe than 10 years ago, if I have my numbers right, whereas in other parts of the world there are less forests.
Yeah, I mean, like LENZING exists since 80 years already in the market. Yeah, so yeah, and this footwear project started 10 years ago. So we are really proud to see now all these successes on stage in reality. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess it was more something that I learned and I got really excited about, and we've been very happy about how it's performed on this shoe. So we've used it 50% tensile, 50% wool on the upper to use, the natural properties of wool, combined, which are, light, thermoregulating, water repellent, and combined with the tensile, we have a lot more resistance and durability because it is a running shoe. So for us, it's a winning combo.
I love how you talk to like the collaboration, with your development team. And that's it, doing things differently. You need so many multidisciplinary minds in there.
And for us as a company, it's also so inspiring seeing so many products in the market. Also, when you think about you're super quick in how to use our fibers also in your products. So this was for us also inspirational, and also a shout out also to all the other ones who are now at the sustainable angle. So please approach us also to our booth. So we're happy to talk with you about also new innovations that we can really make it happen in the end, also to push a little bit further on this side to make footwear in the end more sustainable.
Yeah, and it's interesting you saying your aha moment, realizing that it was wood. It's like, are there any misconceptions that you hear frequently about tensile, and would you like to address it with this audience?
In particular, when it comes to footwear, I think none of us today sitting here would really think about to use tensile fibers first for footwear, because we are so well positioned as a soft material, as a cozy material, really next to skin. So I think this was a kind of a misconception, but it's also about the construction. So when you think about the right yarn adjustments, the right material adjustments, the right fabric adjustments. So also when we had this collaboration with Solene, so there was Coats Footwear, who have a patented technology, which is called the ProWeave technology. It's a 4-way stretch. They also got awarded last year for the Eco Performance Award at Performance Days. So it comes so many things along to push this development in the end. But the misconception, of course, it was how versatile tensile is in the end. So it's not about just a soft material. It's also more, it can be rigid. It can be also used for so many types of applications, ranging also from fashion to the packaging industry, where you can also use them as a kind of material packaging for fruit and vegetables. So there are so many applications in the market you would not think of how to use our wood-based fibers.
That's interesting. It made me think of something that, David, building a fully bio-circular brand, how does that impact both your material choices and then the greater supply chain?
I mean, it impacts everything, literally everything. We have one very simple rule that every single material on the product must be compost capable. Every material. There's no compromise at all, ever. And that suddenly narrows the window massively. Just to big up Tensile one more time. They're one of the few very big companies that actually supply. So when we found their materials in such a broad variety of capabilities and fiber uses, it allowed us just to experiment. So this was a great thing for us. But honestly, being a 100% biocircular brand is super challenging, because almost everything has something that doesn't degrade on it. Even if you're buying organic cotton, sounds wonderful, but the finishes are not biodegradable, the softeners are not biodegradable. There's all sorts of things inside. So for us, it was really working very, very closely with all the vendors, and really working only with the vendors that are willing to be super transparent with us.
Amazing. And I'm going to go to you, Solene. So obviously 75% natural material running shoe to the market. It's so powerful and so exciting. I'm genuinely oh my goodness. But you've spoken quite openly about the journey and today as well. How are you embracing communicating this evolution to help build trust and momentum towards truly sustainable footwear and innovation?
So, we're here on a panel today. You guys taking the time to listen to us. I really want you to get takeaways from this. I want you to have fun, and I want you to not find this boring. So this is basically how I embrace the part of communication around the shoe. this is our first shoe. You can run a half marathon. I know I have with it, but it's not the best running shoe yet. It's just impossible. Even if we made this shoe completely out of petrol in Europe, it probably wouldn't be the best running shoe either. It's a process. So I'm not trying to tell you this shoe is terrible, because it's not true. I'm very, very proud of it, and it's an amazing shoe. But we got to start somewhere. And I think with sustainability, it's the pressure to be perfect can be overwhelming. It can be a creativity killer. So my advice is, and this is what I do, is just try to do your best and try to be honest. Because I think we also have a lot of pressure to say, hey, this is the best thing ever, buy it. And you'll figure out if the product has flaws later. And I don't think it's very honest. Like, when I need support of people to buy this shoe, I'm just tell them what they can use it for. And if I don't think it's right for them, I will also tell them. But I'm thinking long term in this, because so much learning, right, into making your own shoe. And if you're a designer, you always want to make the next one and the next one and the next one. So I just feel transparency, being able to make fun of yourself, and remind yourself to have fun with sustainability. For example, we did little things in our shoes, but it's like on the outsole, we've got these little logos that are like smiley faces. And we also have our initials on the outsole of the shoes of a few key people who worked on the product, because that doesn't make the shoe more harmful to the environment. It's just part of the mold. Inside the shoe, we also have a little label to remind people to send it back to us after use. But on the other shoe, it says clean AF, which is just, because in running shoe, we always say fast AF. I don't know if I'm allowed to curse or not here. But that slogan really connects with people, because when you talk about sustainability, it can be heavy, can be depressing, because it's really, really hard when sometimes you, as I'm sure everyone here has done that, you think you find a problem that is going to be better for the industry, you find a solution and you realize your solution was in the wrong direction. But I think it's important that everybody tries to make new things better, and to bring creativity and joy into it.
Exactly.
I mean, I'd overall say it's almost a more human approach, and something I can really relate to, because I think sometimes if we just take legislation on itself, take out material names, it is like alphabet soup sometimes, and very, very overwhelming and confusing. So that leads me to an open question for the panel. Like, how do you think small brands and big brands could perhaps learn from each other, especially maybe when it comes to sourcing? I'm hearing a lot about this material sourcing, end-to-end supply chain, end of life. Anyone want to speak to that?
Sure, I can speak a little bit to that. I mean, we produce for some other brands as well, our other company. And we've been on a journey with those guys for 15 years now, and trying to help encourage them to become less harmful. I don't want to say sustainable, because it's not real. But in footwear, it's extremely difficult. The big guys and the small guys, I mean, obviously, if you're small, you're very flexible. We chose, for example, not to be financed traditionally. We're doing it ourselves, specifically so that we can get the product to market without any restrictions and without any typical business expectations. The big brands have created a model over especially the last decade, where their margins are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, because the industry is a little bit broken. And if I always think about, my father had a shoe factory. So when I was 17, I started my father's shoe factory. Unfortunately, that was when the whole industry started to collapse in Europe and moved to Asia. But I was lucky enough to experience it for 2 or 3 years. That industry was very simple. You made a shoe, you went to a buyer, a retailer, you sold it for £5, they sold it for 10, and you made it in 2 to 3 weeks. It was such a simple business. Now you're looking at a typical global brand. They're having to mark up between 5-6 times, from the cost of the product to the cost to the consumer. And it's all because there's too long a lead time, too much inventory, there's too much waste, there's too many markdowns. The industry itself isn't helping itself, actually. So I think the industry could learn from the smaller brands on flexibility and agility, because I think they're so connected to today's financing that it's almost impossible. Whenever I listen to the larger brands, they always talk about the business case. But at the end of the day, they are so big, they can move the business case as well, actually. But the argument holds a little water for me because they don't need to move at all. They just need to start. Just like Solene said, we just need to start. So for us, we're just trying to be a catalyst for change. I can't do better than the big guys. It's impossible. I don't have that kind of financing. I don't have the resources. But our goal is to be a catalyst for change. We're just trying to show that if it can be done, maybe it should be done. And why not, you know? And maybe we don't have to have a 6 times markup for it as we get going. I mean, another very small example, if I can, that and it's a silly example, but I tell it.
I like silly at the end of the day. That's
I
good.
remember buying my first flat screen TV. I actually did it when my wife was traveling because she probably wouldn't have really approved. But and it was ridiculously expensive at the time. I can buy that TV now for 2% almost of the cost. It's only 15 years ago. So we need the opportunity to scale. We need to be allowed to scale. And I think for us, we're taking it on ourselves to try that and prove a point, just so that we can, and we hope people enjoy it. And then as we grow, we can bring the cost down. And it's the same reason why we're manufacturing it ourselves. A huge barrier to entry is the fact that none of the brands make anything themselves anymore. So their designers are sitting a continent away, and sure, they visit from time to time, but if you manufacture it yourself, you feel what you can do. And if you feel what you can do, you can make it more beautiful with restriction. And I think this is what the industry's lost.
I mean, that message resonates massively with me. I'm always a huge believer in get back to the making, be curious, ask questions how it's made. But only doing that can we make it better.
Add something.
Sad, yeah.
You know, today it's a sustainability event, and it's overwhelmingly attended by women. And thank you, the men who are there too. But the shoe industry is a very male-driven industry. And what I want to tell the big brands is to show some balls. Is that the right expression? Yeah. Sorry, I'm French, but...
Or maybe remove some.
Yeah, exactly. But like, it's time to be brave. We know the big brands are brave with their marketing, with their choice of collaborators that are public figures. So they know how to take a gamble. So saying that this is scary, you know, this whole idea of greenwashing because you don't want to say the wrong thing, they pick the wrong people to represent the brand all the time. So I think it's time to move the needle and just try new things. And I know the investors, we have investors on our company, put a lot of pressure, but the people inside the brands, they want to make things better. They have the best expertise in the world. Why is this us, tiny little brands, you know, changing our whole life, sacrificing our very comfortable previous jobs to show that something better can be done? Yeah, and collaborate with us because we're also open to collaborating.
Thank you.
Collaboration, exactly.
I also have to add on what Solene just mentioned. So I think it's really about, as you're like really trailblazers in the market, so it's really respect for you that you also made the way, that you're really brave, that you're really like take the risk to make a change in the world. So I think that's really well appreciated. And also as LENZING, we want to support this and think about like the matching business models to at least also elevate this to the second level now. Yeah.
Joanne, can I bolt on?
Of course you can.
Okay, I'm gonna zag a little bit because I
like
feel
zagging.
for the brands.
It's the end of the day. We need zagging.
I 1000% support the clarion call for brands to support innovators and to be very bold. I also think they bring an enormous amount of expertise, networks, scale, and of course they do take risks on working with little guys like us. Making multi-year bets in a quarterly earnings world is not an easy thing to do, and especially it's not an easy thing to do when you're trying to really just tilt a massive shift little by little. And I think that the agility that startups bring to this space and the kind of provocation of like, okay, we're operating with 1,000 beautiful constraints, but what would have to be true can sometimes work so beautifully with brands where you get someone who believes in you and in the business and in the space. And that human connection, to your point, is so important. Because we've had some project sponsors, some brands that we've worked with that the person will put their personal reputation on the line, will say yes and ask for forgiveness later. And I don't want that to go unrecognized either.
Yeah, amazing. I'm going to shift pace a little bit. We have lots of questions from a very engaged audience, so thank you so much. I'm going to start with one from Christina. Do you think that footwear recycling will ever happen at scale? What would it need to make it economically feasible? Anyone want to take that?
I mean, I'm the shoemaker, I guess.
Yeah.
So it's everything is possible, actually. But the most important thing is will. I think as I say, going back to commoditizing, it needs to begin at the bottom, not at the top, in my opinion. I think generally, if you're a brand who's trying to promote themselves by the next great thing, be it sustainability or be it a new cushioning system, you tend to start at the top and filter down. For me, it should be from the bottom, pushing up, where you take your base products, and that allows you to actually not talk about it, just do it. I've heard that phrase somewhere before as well, but just really get on with it and commit as a company to achieve something, and to allow the recycling feedstock and the recycling materials to actually blossom. But without those commitments, how can they?
Does anyone anything else to add? Or,
It's a really difficult one.
Yeah.
We're doing our best from our little point of view as a brand, and it's bigger than us. It's down to also legislation and stop putting everything on the consumers' back. It's I think countries and lawmakers need to also help us create those systems. So it's a difficult subject because I don't have the answer. Honestly.
It is a difficult subject. It's complex system design. I'm going to shift on to the next question. Are any finishing treatments applied to the shoe materials, such as water repellency or moisture wicking? If so, are they bio-based yet, or is this still a challenge?
Yeah, maybe I take that one over. Yeah, there are bio-based ones in the market already. So we also teamed up with people like Rudolph Chemie and so on. So they have this amazing bio-based coating, which is water repellent. It's called the Vuko Dry One. So we are constantly searching also for partners who are also like on a fabric stage, who are working together with us to take this even further, this journey. Like when it comes to performance, of course, everybody is looking at water repellency, like also in particular when it comes to sport shoes. Yeah, so that's a given. So yeah, there are bio-based solutions in the market. They are not well known yet. Yeah, so we are really keep constantly pushing that it's also more aware, that also the brands are more aware. So there are also, I think some of them are also here, for instance, also Hermin, they have amazing fabrics. When it comes to water repellency, they use like this bio-based water treatment also for their fabrics. So you can also have a look over there. Also for jackets, so I think they have an amazing approach already. But it's not a lot, I have to say. Yeah.
And the next question actually sort of builds upon that. I put these two together because it's from Anonymous, and it's asking, your shoes are all white. How would you approach developing coloured shoes that have minimal impact on the environment? And would you keep the shoes, or would you keep the shoes white if you couldn't find that solution?
Well,
I think in here today we have...
we both have coloured shoes, so I'm sure if you go to...
You have some solutions. I think it just might be the samples there.
Yeah, we just happen to have all white shoes today.
But that was it, because basically this shoe happened. I met Miles, the engineer of the shoe, because I asked on LinkedIn why sustainable shoes were always white. And I got some answers, and I met someone who was willing to create a shoe with me. And it was at the time because the use of PA11, which is a recyclable PA, only came in this color. For this shoe in particular, it's white because we didn't want to dye the wool. And yes, all the materials by default were available in this color, and it allowed us to not add extra dye. We also have the shoe in green and in black, but we decided to only dye the wool to create some color, because obviously if you just have white product, you're still making boring product, and so it means that the other colors we have are quite light, and little by little we hope to be able to offer more color. For example, our midsole material was only available in white. They're starting to offer it in black and other colors, but again, it starts with one thing and then it opens the door to more possibilities.
Yeah, I mean, for us, if you go to SOLK.com, you'll see there's 4 colors already available. We'll be launching many more colors in the future as well. So I think color's critical to desirability. We have to have color. It's really important.
I think there's 2 other considerations on the white decision. One of them is that we've heard from our customers that something up to 80% of a sportswear company's shoes will be white, just driven by customer demand. So it makes sense for us as innovators to focus on where the market is. And the other thing is that, of course, a lot of the dyes that are on the market today, the commercially available ones, are filled with toxins and kind of will degrade or dilute your sustainability offering. So sometimes by not adding those in, if you can accomplish an opaque white, it's a more sustainable decision.
Absolutely, makes sense. It's a bit of a tricky one, and it's probably something that I've chosen this one probably because I also experienced this, like having worked on the circular design guide at Nike and trying to incentivize the return of product at end of life, and realizing how utterly challenging that is. So how can any of you speak to how you plan to motivate your consumer when they purchase that? Is there anything in place that you're thinking about to get your shoes back to your brand?
We're all looking at Solene.
Yeah, we launched this shoe about a year ago, and honestly, we don't get many returns. 1 year is, not enough to get that. So that's a good sign. But when I talk to people in the industry who told me that where I told them we're going to do a shoe that people can return to us, they were like, "Don't do it." So of course we did it, but it's very difficult. We want to incentivize them by giving them a discount on their next shoe product. We are a business. We still need to exist. We need to bring in money. But it's very difficult to, how it is when you have a shoe in your closet and especially if you love it, and you see it's kind of like you can't use it anymore. You keep it in a corner of your closet for literally sometimes years. And then you will move or you'll do a big clean out, and then you won't really want to send it back to the brand via posting it, even if the brand pays for the shipping. So it's definitely something that is not solved. And again, I'll be honest about it. I wish it could be, but that's also why having less plastic for us is a priority, because that we can have control over. The return, so far, haven't cracked that.
It's interesting because I really agree with you there. I have talked to many a sneakerhead and they're like, no, I'm keeping my shoes for 40 years. And I'm like, how do we get it back?
Yeah, I mean, ours, of course, are created specifically to come back. That's the whole idea behind them. Again, if you don't bring them back, they will eventually degrade as well, safely and ultimately harmless. For us, you could simply go on our website, ask to return them. We'll ask you a couple of basic questions. Did you put any chemicals on them? Did you do this? Did you do that? And if the answers are honest and no, we will send them a compostable bag and they send the shoes back to us. And what we do is, in our own facility in Germany, is we actually grind the shoes up, we mix them with things like horse poo and green grass and coffee grinds, and we create effectively a pre-industrial composting slurry. That's essentially what we do. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a system where we don't have to make the scale ourselves, because industrial composting exists, especially in Europe, very broadly. We're trying to create the feedstock for that will allow us to talk to the legislators to allow us to put it in. And we also happen to have our own farm in Germany as well, where we will do all of our experimenting.
I love in the exhibition outside your little vial of the silo of what's happening there. That includes horse poo and labelled as such, which is brilliant. As we come to a close, I'm actually not going to ask the question because I really see that this is something that's come up for us, and we've only got 2 minutes left. But really, what I hear from you is this more broader systems thinking, but also very collaborative and multi-industry and multidisciplinary.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And do you think that this is really how we need to be working to create this change to make better product going forward? Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, the collaboration is everything. I think for us, for example, we would like very much to collaborate with other brands and do products together. I think this would help just get the word out. And I mean, you're fighting a very large machine out there, and getting known is a little bit of a challenge. And mostly people just don't know. I mean, who searches for bio-circular footwear? I mean, in the past, we even did design your own footwear online as well 20 years ago. We were a bit too early for that too. But I think it's really just a question of finding the right collaboration partners that allow you all to survive together. It doesn't need to be such a competition all the time. You know?
Yeah, I totally echo that. The competition aspect in footwear, I mean, especially in running, because it's such a big sport right now. But that's why I love about sustainability is the community is really warm and engaging and wants to share tips and wants to introduce people. That's why it's so lovely to come here at Future Fabrics. And collaboration is key because we've had lots of learnings from this shoe. We've had some failures, yes, but we've had lots of successes as well. And we're happy to share that because we're confident enough in our ability to be creative and unique that we're not too scared of getting our ideas, stolen. And I think we need to relax a little bit. And it's so nice to collaborate as well because you meet new people, you learn tons of new things, and it's basically why we're doing this in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, I think collaboration becomes a little bit of like a panel bingo buzzword, but I think projects like these show that sometimes the sum can be greater than the parts, and I think it's been exciting for us to see how 1 + 1 can equal 3, working with the right partners, because there are parts of this shoe that we would never have a hope of having landed ourselves, but if we just tap into the existing expertise and resource of our peers, and indeed of the brands, the larger brands that we work with, we can accomplish a lot more together. So I know it's a little bit, it's panel-y, but I do think it's really important.
I agree. And I think, even internally at brands, it's not even panel-y. Collaboration is a bit of a buzzword, but it doesn't actually
For a reason.
happen.
Yeah, I think you can't be an expert like in every single field, so you have to team up to have a shared expertise. So that's our main goal. So at LENZING, we have a massive knowledge in fiber production and how they can be used. But in the end, we need someone else also to have different kind of expertise to make this innovation come to life. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining me and for bringing your samples. And thank you for listening. That's the end of today's panel.
It's been so fun to pop all of these out.